To essential questions and enduring understandings, I have them side by side because there are definitely some connections between them. You're going to have 2 to 3 per unit for each of them. Now, if you have 4, that's not a big deal, but once you get to 5, you probably have too many, and something isn't probably going to be an enduring understanding or essential question if you're at 5 or above, or it means that you can combine some. There should be some good alignment between essential questions and enduring understandings, where if I read an enduring understanding, I should be able to kind of match that idea with one of the essential questions. It doesn't have to be a one-to-one match, but I should see connections between the two. The first question I always ask when I read an essential question is, can it be answered? So if it can, then it's not an essential question. So what I mean, can it be answered, is it kind of a black and white answer? Is it a yes, no? Is it, did you put it in so it's like a definition of something? Then that wouldn't be an essential question. That would be a guiding question, perhaps, a question you might ask in a classroom, but nothing that would be enduring that you would ask over and over again. And that's really what you want an essential question to be. Is it engaging for students? That's something that, are they going to engage in a debate? Are they going to have different answers? Is this something worthwhile having a debate over? That would be more like an essential question. Enduring understandings are broad enough that it has enduring value, and it's something that would be asked throughout one's lifetime, and often is at the heart of the discipline. And we're going to go through and give you a few examples that hopefully will clarify on some of these. So if I jump to the enduring understandings, examples on the right, written constitution sets forth the terms and limits of a government's power. This is something that could be an enduring understanding in one grade level. It could be in another grade level. It's something that will be lasting throughout our lifetime. All living things have needs and must depend on and interact with resources in their environments in order to survive is another really good one. An operation can be undone by its inverse. Math, we always have a hard time finding math enduring understandings in essential questions sometimes, but mathematical problem solvers use a variety of methods to solving problems is an example. An individual can affect great change. So you can see that these aren't specific and exact to a unit, and that's really important. Essential questions are ones, again, that spark curiosity. Think about, why is this topic worth studying? Not answered easily. So some examples we have here is, what is effective writing? What makes an estimate reasonable? How can we learn to evaluate our own writing? How do you determine your current fitness level? Why do we have to fight wars? How and why does a nation decide to go to war? Is gravity a fact or a theory? So when you're reviewing your essential questions, you kind of want to go back and ask yourself if it's specific to that unit. Is it something that's enduring? Is it sparking curiosity? And definitely go to other examples to kind of help clarify for you. When we jump to content, basically in our content really should be, it's always going to be a noun. So if you notice that there are verbs in the content section, then probably they should be moved over to the skill section. Couple examples at the top. Content could be often a topic, like human body, fractions, World War II. It could be a concept, like structure, functions, symbiotic connections. In the format, typically, if we're going to look at one that's exemplary examples, we would have kind of that concept or topic area, like we have on the left there, like World War II or double bar graph, and then you're going to have a colon, and then you're going to have more specific descriptors. So World War II, key causes for U.S. entry, or double bar graph, up to 3 variables, and you can see the examples that are given here. If you found that in your first draft you had a long list of vocab words, go back to the standards and see how those vocab words can be grouped and what kind of categories they would fall in. So for example, if you had a list of the key causes for U.S. entry into World War II, and and you had a long list of them, then go back and put World War II, colon, and key causes for U.S. entry, and then if you want, you can list some of the vocab there. But you shouldn't have a really long list of vocab words in your content area. It should be grouped together. When we get to the skill statement, now you're going to find that in an exemplary skill statement, there are going to be 3 parts of that skill statement, and I tried to color code for you to help you out. You're going to have in green where we have the measurable verb, then you'll have the target, how it will be measured, like what mode you're going to use, and then a descriptor which details the relationship to content. So let's take a look at what that means. So the first verb, we have compare. So it's every skill statement needs to start with a verb. And when we do the formatting for that, that verb is going to be in bold. But when we write compare, then that's a measurable verb. The next part we have here, we have in writing. So that's the target. That's how we're going to measure it. That's what mode we're going to use. And the target is what I've seen missing in a number of skill statements. Now, to reach proficiency, you don't have to have that target, but if you want to have an exemplary skill statement, then putting that in there will be helpful. And then you'll see the descriptor. So it says 3 elements, line, stanza, meter, using traditional and non-traditional forms of poetry. So let's look at the next one. Justify, so that's a measurable verb. In writing, there's the target. Effects of economic ebb and flow in relationship to target audience sales. So we have a descriptor there. And last example, identify and define, so measurable verbs. In writing, target. 5 common literary devices used in diary-based reading, structure, tone, theme, point of view, characterization. So you have the descriptors there. So let's take a look at how we have verbs on the left that are not measurable, and then how it can be turned into being measurable. So on the left, the verb understand. So understand how voice can affect a writer's work and a reader's interpretation. To make this clear, so identify 3 common characteristics of voice, and justify why people have a favorite author. So we're showing how we've turned that understand into 2 measurable verbs. So let's look at the next one. Know that the sun is one of many stars in the Milky Way galaxy, and that stars different size, temperature, and color. So we're going to define chemical components of a star, and then compare and contrast stars based on 3 attributes: size, temperature, and color. And finally, show how the 3 branches of government function through a system of checks and balances. So we're going to so we can measure it, compare and contrast the roles of legislative, executive, and judicial branches as set forth by the Constitution, I should say, and justify purpose for separation of governmental power. When we jump into the descriptors, that's going to add that critical clarity, enhances the learning expectation relationship between a skill or a skill set and the aligned content learning. So often you're going to see the references to the content more specifically within the skills. So it's going to be relating back to it. So let's say on the left, originally we had content was addition and skills were solve addition problems. So if we want to clarify that more, we're really talking about addition, colon, and then 2 digits with regrouping. Solve horizontal and vertical problems, solve 2-step word problems. So we're going to be doing learning 2 different kind of skills with that. Let's look at the other example. So let's say someone wrote content was fossils and the skill is to study fossils. So let's make this better. Fossils, colon, formation would be the content. And then identify visually and in writing, so that's really good because it has the target there. 4 key conditions and processes necessary for fossils to form. And then finally, if we jump down to clocks, tell in writing time to half hour, quarter hour. So time, half hour, quarter hour, so that's specific. And then tell in writing time on analog and digital faces using numerals, colon, and identify in writing time period using AM, PM symbols. So other specific examples of skill descriptors. Something else that you want to keep in mind when we're looking at skills versus activities is, let's take a moment to look at this chart comparing the 2. If you look on the left, if someone wrote down for a skill statement, role play the Boston Tea Party. Well, the verb that we're looking at is that role play. And so you need to ask yourself, is role-playing the primary learning expectation? Well, it actually isn't. That's the activity they might do in class, but it's not the skill. We don't want them to learn how to role-play. We want them to learn about the Boston Tea Party or elements about it. So that turned into a skill is justify in writing ramification of Boston Tea Party in relationship to igniting American Revolution from multiple perspectives. What if you put around on the left, like walk around the room and interview classmates while focusing on 3 techniques? Well, we don't want them to learn how to walk. We want them to really get into the 3 techniques and interviewing skills. So you can see how it's turning into a skills statement on the right as well. So take a moment to read through the next couple just to see the difference between the skills and activities. And this is something when you review your skill statements, you're going to want to go through and just make sure that you have skills listed and not activities. A little hint here too. If you see demonstrate, understand, know, show, and use, and we showed a couple examples earlier, those are all non-measurable verbs. So I probably see understand and use and show probably more often. Just make sure that you really emphasize what measurable verb that you want. If you use any of the verbs over here, like solve or illustrate, draw, write, you don't need to put a target. So what do I mean by that? It means if I say write, I don't need to then put a target of in writing, because it's already clear and self-explanatory that you're going to be doing it in writing. So I did just give you kind of a quick overview of the different elements, what you're going to be doing. Once you've completed your first draft of your curriculum map for a course that you're working on, then you're going to do an individual review of the draft using a curriculum map quality review rubric. I'll show that to you in a second, and start to make necessary revisions. And then the next step would to have someone else look at it. So you complete either departmental or peer review of the draft using that rubric again and make any additional revisions. And as you go through the process, there'll be less and less revisions that you'll have to make. And then finally, a final draft will be submitted to either department chairs, if you have them, or curriculum assistants for a final look. And then the final drafts will go to the building principal and curriculum director, myself, for final approval for it to be published. By the time it gets to stage 3 and 4, probably if you've done the review process and kind of looked at the guidelines, it's going to be in pretty good shape to be published. It might be just minor changes that would have to happen. So the beginning process takes longer when you're writing, but the review process, if you did the writing well, good first draft, you should be in good shape. So here is an example of the rubric, and I recommend that, and I've sent this out to you a few times in some emails. I would recommend that you have that rubric handy, and as well as the curriculum guideline rubric handy, and guidelines handy when you're working on your curriculum maps. We are shooting for proficiency, so if it is proficient in this category, then we can publish it. Now, ideally, we'd like to get some of them, to move over to exemplary, and in some areas it's very easy to do so. For example, if you jump to, the skill statement or the content statement, if you we're looking for a variety of levels used in Bloom's taxonomy, for example, for the skills. It need to be measurable, aligned to standards. But if you really have some higher order thinking skills used, then that's going to push it into the exemplary category. If you have the target and descriptor done very well, it's going to head into that category as well. If it's reflecting proficiency levels, we're really in precise and targeted. And so that's exemplary, but we're looking for proficiency here. So this is the tool that I would look at if I wanted to go and kind of see how I'm doing in all of the areas. Great. Well, that concludes my overview of quality map review. Hopefully this was helpful, or at least a review for some of you in some of the areas, and please reach out to me at any point if you need any assistance in your curriculum mapping process. classes. Thank you.